Today's show is sponsored by Okta, the leading independent identity solution. Okta provides best-in-class authorization so your customers and workforce can safely access what they need most right when they need it from anywhere. Organizations around the world trust Okta's Identity Cloud to sign in, authorize, and manage users, whether it's employees, contractors, partners, or customers. And with Okta's developer tools, you'll never have to build authentication again. Our customizable code blocks are flexible and future-proof with easy-to-use APIs and SDKs, so you can do less coding and more shipping. Okta is dedicated to building the most reliable, neutral identity platform because it means protecting more than a login. Identity is protecting people, their ideas, their work, their brilliance. It's protecting your future with confidence. Learn more at okta.com. That's OKTA.com.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. It is the first week in June and a really good week for cloud news. I actually have a number of articles, and if you go to the link, there's actually more articles this week than we're going to talk about. But let's jump right into the first one. First of all, there is a big article out by Andreessen Horowitz, more specifically Sarah Wang and Martin Casado, talking about the cost of cloud and what they're referring to as the $1 trillion paradox. And what they really mean by that is that there's a bunch of studies and breakdowns. And this year, and really last year as well, it's projected for public cloud over $100 billion industry. And of course, that market has matured. We've seen it all mature extremely fast. And many often say they just wouldn't get started. Many startups would not get started anywhere else than public cloud. Of course, that makes perfect sense. But the larger things get, the more those costs go up. And at some point, you almost get, the paradox is you almost get crazy to continue to use it. And you see big stories like Dropbox, of course, with their repatriation, and they saved somewhere in the neighborhood of $75 million a year. So they're kind of the poster child for repatriation. But and they go and look at a number of other companies that are out there. They also present a lot of data, both for and against, and potential solutions for all of this. Really long article, really great article to go read. So I encourage you to go check that out as well. For our second bit of news this week, Cloudera. Cloudera is actually going private. Two private equity firms, KKR and CD&R, both got together and are taking the data analytics firm private for about $4.7 billion. Not a lot was announced as far as future intentions. Are they going to do anything differently? But it was really nice to see a nice little bump in the market and a nice little bump in their stock over this. If I remember correctly, there was a premium on the price of somewhere in the 20-ish% range. So certainly good for them, and look forward to seeing what happens with Cloudera in the future. For our third news article, Amazon today, as I recorded this, just announced the availability of Amazon ECS Anywhere. So think of this as an extension of ECS, so Elastic Container Service, and the ability for AWS customers to deploy ECS in their own environment, really in any environment, bare metal, virtualization, etc. So it's almost a virtualization on the virtualization layer, if you will. But this is all about, there's been some customers out there that maybe haven't embraced ECS, mainly because of something to do with the location. Maybe they have significant capital investments in existing data centers. Maybe they are working in highly regulated industries. But they might have a direction or be all in on cloud for other things. So this really gives them a new tool in the toolbox so that they can now operate those kind of environments on-prem as well going forward. And for our last bit of news this week, I wanted to just highlight something I just thought was interesting. So Microsoft Build came out with what they call a book of news. And I actually don't think this is the first one, but this is the first one I've seen. And you can almost think of this as a digest version of everything that was announced at the show. And I don't know about you, but a lot of us were going to trade shows, and it was easy to keep up with them, or easier to keep up with them. But as things went all virtual, I admit, if I'm not there and I'm not present, a lot of times I miss a lot of the announcements. So this is a book, a digital book that was created that really highlights everything from the show in an easy to digest format. Really, really like this. And this is one of those things I would love to see continue even after we start to go back to in-place events. I just think this is a nice place. It's an all-in-one catch-up place. Really good format, very easy to read. I encourage you to go check that out. And with that, we're going to move on to our show. We have a great topic this week on no-code versus low-code with Gary Hoberman coming right up after the break.
Today's show is brought to you by CBT Nuggets. You know how much we value ongoing education on the Cloudcast, and CBT Nuggets is exactly what Aaron and I wish we had when we were trying to get our certification early in our careers. CBT Nuggets is all about bringing a personalized touch to learning about cloud computing, virtualization, networking, DevOps, and much, much more. Whether it's their hands-on labs with personalized coaching or the online chat functions that come up with every instructor-led course, CBT Nuggets' team of experts is always there to help you get the most from your training and your path to certification. You can check it all out at cbtnuggets.com/cloudcast and sign up for a free trial. You get access to the full catalog of great training, including virtual labs, quizzes, and other premium features completely free for the first 7 days. That's cbtnuggets.com/cloudcast. Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a monitoring analytics platform for cloud scale infrastructure and applications. Datadog provides dashboarding, alerting, application performance monitoring, and log management in one tightly integrated platform, so you can get end-to-end visibility quickly. Be proactive with your monitoring strategy and catch issues before your clients are impacted. Start managing the overall health of your environment with a free Datadog trial. Go to datadog.com/cloudcast for the free trial. That's datadog.com/cloudcast. And we're back. And folks, if you've been paying attention, you know that Aaron and I, from time to time, will talk about this phenomenon that's been going on in our industry for the last couple of years that sometimes is talked about as low code and sometimes is talked about as no code, but it's fundamentally, kind of changing an aspect of how applications are built, how processing is done, and kind of trying to make things simpler for folks that, need to go get things done in their business but aren't necessarily hardcore developers, or they want to solve problems but maybe they don't have a dedicated staff available to them. So we thought, we've been talking about this topic for a while. Let's go out and find some folks that are really experts in this and live and breathe it every single day. So very, very excited to have Gary Hoberman, who is founder and CEO of Unqork. Gary, welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Thank you for having me on, Brian. This is exciting to be here with you. Thanks.
Yeah, you're up in New York City?
Up in New York, we're a block away from Washington Square Park, and it's amazing to see the city come back to life. It's been my home here since public schools in Queens.
Outstanding, yeah,
So
it's
it's
great to see the city's coming back. I know we've been talking about the pandemic for far too long. Before we dive into this topic, which I know is near and dear to your heart, give us a little bit of your background, because you've got some very serious chops in terms of places that are big enterprise companies, lots of process, and I'm really curious kind of how you got from that expertise to getting motivated to start Unqork.
Yeah, so first off, love tech. I love the technology discussions, and what you've been doing here is just incredible. As a background, I started my coding career probably on IBM punch card machines in my father's business back in 5th grade. Nice. So it's been a long time. I was doing Pascal in 6th grade and Fortran 7th grade, and I loved this idea that you could communicate to a machine through a made-up language that someone invented. To me, it was magical. And that passion of mine, I probably did my 10,000 programming hours before high school, which is crazy to think. And I loved just the art of possible. To me, it was magic. And what happened was, after business school, I went straight to Wall Street. I said, I'm going to apply that technology skill to solve real fast, hard-moving problems where billions of dollars are at play. And I did that for the first 25 years of my life. So I built New York Foreign Exchange trading system, Bankers Trust to Smith Barney, the top 3 branch systems. And I became one of the youngest MDs at Citi, owning the most critical systems there. The systems, if there was a mistake, the street went open for them. That's pretty severe. Yeah. So you understood the criticality there. All while never giving up that, coding is problem solving, right? It's like how you communicate, it's problems, it's puzzles. So still building my own hardware at home. I was there in the days when the server used to be under your desk, and if you kicked it too hard, or if the janitor kicked it, the app went down. And then I was there when that server moved to the data room, and all of a sudden, someone played Doom and took down the network. So like all those days, all the way through cloud computing. And I loved still that passion around solving problems through applications. And I became a global CIO at MetLife with 10,000 engineers working for me across 47 countries. And it was, we're spending billions of dollars, in all these companies. I think $500 billion is the amount spent every year of creating software in large enterprises. And that initial passion that I saw was disappearing, meaning we were spending more and more money and we couldn't point to solutions. You couldn't actually solve problems. You're instead defending why things are late and why it doesn't do what you want. And it was getting very painful, not just for me, but for my peers, as I would talk to them in roundtables and hear the same frustration. So I looked, Brian, my first thing was I always looked for solutions, like help me move faster, cheaper, and better, all at the same time. That's what you want. And instead, if you were in my business, I'd say, Brian, you got to choose 2 of the 3. Is it, if you want to move faster, then you're going to sacrifice something. It's either going to be more bugs or it's going to be expense. You have to put more people on it. But right. You can't have both. You can't get it. And so choose 2 of the 3. And that's so with that, I was waiting for the large tech companies to solve this. They couldn't. I was waiting for the players in what we call the low code space to solve this and tried everything out there as to see how it couldn't. And there was no startups that got it. There was no one coming out of the West Coast that said, I'm going to solve this problem for you and let you move faster, cheaper, and better all at the same time. And really what it came down to is that passion that I have about code, it's eliminating code. It's able, you have to be able to actually create software without the constraint of code instead of the ability of code, and do it in a way where you're still able to solve a problem visually and accurately with all the reliability and security you need to solve it. So I got tired of waiting, and I jumped out in 2017 to found Unqork. It was myself and my CTO, Sam Chaptini, who was the employee number 1. And we wound up basically creating the first version in production because all the investors said, hell no, this won't work. There's no way.
Yeah.
So it's been an amazing journey since, and it's just an incredible journey since that time.
Yeah, no, like we were saying before to turn the recorder on, like we love talking to founders who, basically, essentially got to a point where they were frustrated with something, and they said, you know what, if no one else can do this, I'll build it myself. And the nice thing about that is you have sort of direct experience. You've got pain, you've got scars, you've got scabs from it, and so it brings a very unique perspective when we get a chance to talk to founders who've sort of lived through it and then just said, I'm going to go solve this, because it's, like you said, it's not just a problem that you had, it was a problem your peers had, it's a problem that thousands of companies have. I'm curious about this space. You talk about it as being no code. I know some folks will talk about it as being low code, but it's it's definitely a space that's not the kind of hardcore enterprise Java WebSphere kind of place. How do you generally think about it? Because sometimes when we have these new trends, it catches people's catches their eye. They get excited about it, but then sometimes it becomes this sort of silver bullet to solve all problems. Like how do you kind of frame up this space and kind of how you describe it to people in terms of, like you said, solving problems?
Yeah, so the first thing we say is it's a new way to create software. So we recently presented just yesterday to a global CIO, and all she kept doing in the meeting, she's an engineer, she's brilliant. She kept trying to say, are you like this? Are you like this? Are you a PaaS solution? And we simply said, let us show you. Let us do a live demo and walk you through the solution. And on the fly, what do you want to build? Do you want to build a trading platform? Like, let's do it right now. And at the end of the 45 minutes, she said, oh my God, I just went back to university because this is brand new software development. And she says, I get it. Now I get it. And so to us, all of those tools that you mentioned and what's out there today are additional tools in the tool belt trying to allow someone to move 30% faster still in the box they play in. Still in that I want to code. Like, so, okay, great, I'm going to generate code. But I love the WebSphere analysis or WebLogic or any of those tools that were out there back then that we used to use in Java. If you take that analogy, and I'm going to give you a sample. So a sample would be we're building a system to enroll you for a new subscription service. It could be a Peloton type service. So of course, when you click enroll, I'm interested. First field is like, tell me your name and email and phone number, and then you click next. And the next field might be, what's your credit card number? We'll make it simple. And you're done. 2 steps. You would call that a wizard. Like, it's a wizard. It's next and previous and it screens. And that's what we would call it. That's what you'd consider it. If you were doing this in Java, in coding, you have to first basically start with a schema. So what's your database? Of course, you have name and there's address. Maybe there's multiple phone numbers for home and work. And by the way, then there's going to be your credit card number. And if it's PCI compliance or not, you're going to store it or a token. And at the end of the day, you've created a schema that's going to be defined in some relational database that then gets defined in an object tier for Java, which the hibernate or another object tier to make it abstracted. And then you create your Java classes, and then you create your HTML and the AJAX calls, and you deploy it on some hardware environment, and you test it. And then for every 50 lines of Java code, there's one defect traditionally that's found.
Right.
And then what happens is you deploy it, and the second the business user sees it, he's like, oh my God, that's not what I wanted. I need 3 screens. And you have the labels here. And by the way, it's got to work in Spanish too.
Right.
And all of a sudden, those changes are creating a risky system. You're going back, you're altering tables and adding fields and making them optional because you can't change the schema, drop the tables. And I've done all this. And the reality when you're doing that is you can't move fast. And eventually you're telling the business no. And eventually you're communicating them and saying, sorry, this is not going to work. And this is why it's going to cost $10 million and take 9 months. And in reality is that's the way it's done. But then you look at the space, let's just say a little bit differently. If that's Java and that's the way it's done today, there's a lot of accelerators that say we're low code. And that's, as you mentioned, that's been around. If you look at the low code space, I think the average company is 22 years old, maybe something like that. And the newest one before us was 2007. That's on any of the research material. Right. So, the newest company was founded before cloud really took off and before relational database went to NoSQL. And so we basically look at the space a little different. We say that low code, in that space, it gives you a place to host code. It says, great, here's some drag and drop components, and we'll generate code for you. Drag and drop will generate the code that you're still going to host. You're still going to deploy. You still need the database. You still need all the things around it. So it's a component to make you move slightly faster to generate code. But the issue with that, and what's fundamentally different about us, is by allowing you to inject code, what they're doing is they're basically not benefiting all the use cases around it other than that one. What I mean by that is you can take any low-code company out there and just search for the company name with the word wizard, and you'll find how many lines of code it takes to deploy a wizard, like next and previous framework within their code. It's all hard-coded. And the second you hard-code that, if I was building it for I'm going to make it up, my bike subscription service, and you're starting a yoga subscription service, you're going to need a wizard. You're going to code another wizard again. And there's no benefit to us, and there's no scale in technology at that point. There's no scale in the application. Yeah. Instead, we're all starting with a simple base and extending it. And that simple base sometimes is a CRM tool. that said, hey, great, we solved CRM. Now use it to build your trading platform. Absolutely not. Won't work. And then another tool might be we're an ERP tool or an ITSM tool, and we've solved this. Everyone solved a very simple case and then said, we solved it. Now do something more with it by coding. It's very similar to Excel. Excel said, hey, we're a spreadsheet. You want to do something more? Use VBA, macros.
Right.
And the problem with that is as soon as you inject code, it's legacy. As soon as you do it, you're in someone else's environment, someone else's container, and the issue becomes upgrades and maintenance and features, which you'll never get. So we heard today of one client with a low-code solution that's 3 years in spending $60 million in upgrades to just go to the next version.
Yeah, so they're sort of back to the old, ERP model where you're dependent on consultants and you never change anything. And so it's interesting you kind of walk through that because it does seem like, this promise of, hey, we've described it as being, low or no, hence, things should be simpler for you. You're sort of describing like, well, they just replaced one thing with another thing. Yeah, they might have saved 15 or 20% or whatever it might be, but they haven't kind of gotten at the heart of what were the problems, that were causing you so much pain, right? Whether it was, like you said, maintaining sort of legacy code, technical debt, going through upgrade cycles and so forth. So like, how does the philosophy start to change around that, such that it's not looked at like a toy, it's looked at to solve sort of complex problems, but it really solves some of these, like you said, getting rid of software problems as opposed to just masking them as something else.
Yeah, so what's different about us is we saw the second we allow someone to inject code or the second we generate code, that code could be overwritten. So we can't allow it. Fundamentally, we said in the beginning, no code generation, no code allowed. We're a new way to create software with a new interpreter that we've invented. That's our secret sauce, but the customer owns the IP, which is unique. So with that said, what it meant was instead of solving simple CRM cases or ERP cases, we had to solve the most complex case as day one. We had to make sure it worked for the ultimate complexity case, so everything else is simple from there. So we designed it right to begin with. And we started with an industry where, even though I spent 20 years on Wall Street and trading and capital markets, my last 5 years of insurance showed me that no technology company has ever solved insurance, ever. And the reason is it's state regulated, not federal, so you have 50 different versions. And I looked at companies like, Computer Science Associates, CSE, and they spent $100 million trying to combine life and annuities, two businesses on the same platform, and they gave up and said, impossible. So the first use case for us was we're going to tackle insurance, not just life insurance and annuities, retirement or P&C and personal lines and auto insurance and then commercial insurance and specialty. And we said we're going to tackle all of those business lines across all the top companies, the largest, most complex companies that are going to try to kill us day one, so that everything else is easy. And we did. So we actually had within 6 to 9 months in operation, we had the largest customers from Liberty Mutual in P&C, all on the platform from life insurance. And what I meant was we needed a wizard as a component. And that next and previous example, to us, that's not a wizard, that's a workflow. That replaces your BPMN tool, your business process tool. And I should be able to draw a process says step 1 is customer information and step 2 is payment. And that's it. And that should automatically give me my next and previous navigation with multi-language and state and management. So to us, that was core to the platform because we saw the need across companies. And when we entered banking, where Goldman Sachs became our first banking customer in 2018, we basically only had to add SOC 2 compliance, which is a Privacy Shield compliance. And then we had to add worm compliance, write once, read many, to be able to store documents and data without change. But what's different is because there's no code, no one's allowed code, all the customers, including those earliest insurance companies, became worm compliant, became SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, became GDPR compliant. So what's different is everyone's benefiting each other in our space, and no one's frozen in time. No one's frozen on a version that's going to take millions of dollars to upgrade down the road. And they benefit each other not just in functionality, like, hey, I need a new feature and everyone gets it, but they benefit each other in testing and cyber testing and pen testing and everything around the environment, since we host the whole environment for them.
Yeah. I'm curious, and I know you've lived through this. You see new technologies come in. They have a lot of promise. We're going to solve these problems. We're going to solve those problems. And especially if they come in and they're somewhat opinionated. Opinionated being like, we're going to put certain guardrails in because if we can do that, we can make things go faster. We can reduce things. How do you, as you go into these organizations, because all the companies you talked about, have been around for a while. They have legacy cultures. They've got legacy debt. How do you go in and get them to start adopting this new way without constantly asking you to sort of veer off what you do and do the old, kind of replicate the old thing that they have? Like, have you found a way to, keep the technology as clean as you want and, make it fit into different cultures that, have old baggage, if you say?
We do, and of course you do see, and it sounds like you've had that experience. We definitely do see that old baggage, the old change culture. Typically, for the first 3 years of our existence, what we would do is sit with the business leader and the technology and say, show us the problems you haven't been able to solve. So don't focus on things that are working. And don't give us surveys and simple problems and spreadsheets, which are jokes. Like don't give us any end user computing that's going to cause issues, and show us that. And then we're going to, on the fly right now in front of you, show you how we start to build that. And then we'll come back next week with a production ready system to solve that. That's been that's the sales motion. And it's an easy sales motion because we'll invest the time up front to show them it works for their use case. And if it doesn't, we'll be the first to tell them no. Haven't yet told anyone no, but it does at least open that door so that, as you said, we're not coming in like any other tech company saying, we're going to take over the world for your operation here. We're saying, show us where the problems have been. Where have you not succeeded? Where the other vendors fell? Just the hardest thing. So my background, I was always building business systems and trading systems and wealth management, but at one point, I went to the corporate side of Citigroup to help them fix the actual corporation. I was tired of seeing the operation not work, and I wanted to take on. And so it was funny because what we found was that my team became the team to fix the gaps that vendors had. So, for example, the Windows login, believe it or not, remember Windows NT at that point. My team custom overrode the Windows login for every machine because it wasn't secure enough. And then my team had to build the mapping software to basically map applications and drives wherever you are in the world to have that what you need for trading and operations. And then for security, when Linux came out, Red Hat, something you guys definitely know well, my team had to build the TLS layer. And we basically donated it back to Red Hat. And we were always fixing those pieces, which were the gaps there. In our case here, we asked the business for the gaps. We said, show us the gaps. Tell us where, what's onboarding, that's where the issue is. It's still paper. Show us where it's paper. Show us where operations is being used instead of technology. And we always start there because it's something that they're willing to look into since they can't point to what's working. We constantly battle what I would call the irrational evangelists, right? These are the individuals that are on advisory boards for tech companies where the technology isn't delivering, but they're passionate about being part of the process. And we basically say, keep that off to the side. If you're happy with that CRM tool, keep it. If not, we'll replace it. We can completely replace your CRM. But if you're happy, we'll integrate with it and make it work better. So we basically pick the battles from that point. But what's interesting, Brian, is at this point, our latest release we announced yesterday of Unqork 2021.5, we basically have said, it's kind of at this point ready for any technology group to build anything in their company. So back to your initial point is like it's open at this point because not because like, hey, we're going to just start selling this. It's because we have been selling it to solve the most complex problems. So we know it works for that. We understand where the cases are. We know it works and where to apply it. So it's an amazing time to actually be doing that and driving that.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. I do like that phrase, the irrational evangelist, because they are all over the place. They want to be part of the cool new thing. Sometimes you start to realize the cool new thing can't do kind of what it was promised to do, but you're like, I don't want to admit it yet because maybe someday it'll kind of get around the corner and start doing it. I want to ask you one last question because I want to be conscious of your time, but also I want to kind of give folks some guidance. From you all having done this for a while now, been successful with different companies. What are whenever there's a new technology, there are some companies who are able to kind of get started, and like you said, they usually have a specific problem they're trying to solve, and then that success, blossoms in other groups or other problems become solvable, right? You go, oh wow, they did it. Okay, there's not such a big curve. Others, struggle with it. What have you found, makes folks successful in sort of no-code environments, and then what are some of the kind of the common stumbling blocks that they'll have that take them 3 times as long as anybody else to figure it out?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So first thing, I'm going to probably, dispel one myth that's out there around no code, which I constantly see is this word citizen developer gets associated with no code and low code gets associated with developer.
Right.
It's completely false.
Okay.
Completely false. So our target...
There is this mistake that it's just somebody who, needs something a little better than Excel or something like that.
Yeah, and by the way, I was on the receiving end where, we found a business use Lotus Notes and created a 1.2 million lines Lotus Notes application during the SharePoint migration. Like you find this thing and you're like, oh my God, how did you actually do this? And then, every bank right now is struggling to inventory their end user computing. All these spreadsheets that are driving their businesses, which we're taking over, by the way. That to us is an entire business line to drive replacement of spreadsheets and end user computing to compliant environments. But separate from that, this concept of citizen developer, we have yet to meet a business user who has asked us for a platform to create software. We meet a business user that says, I need an onboarding solution. I need a mobile payment solution. I need a merchant bank solution. I need a patient registration in a hospital or in New York City's case, we are powering all of COVID through Unqork. Like I want to deliver meals to 75 million people. That was us. Yeah. So when you think about that, a business user never says, I need a platform. They're looking for technology to build it for them. What we see is Unqork is designed for technologists who understand design principles and want to just simply move 3 times faster, 3 times cheaper. And most importantly, what we're finding through data is there's 600 times less bugs in our code when you build something than when you're building it outside. And no one talks about quality, but that cheaper, better, faster, like the better piece, we're proving 600 times less bugs in Unqork than any software you create, all because you're starting today from where the last customer like Goldman left off, as opposed to starting today from the beginning, which everyone does. That's the biggest difference. So to us, first off, that citizen developer, like business should have a seat at the table in creating the software, but they should absolutely not be creating the software. They shouldn't be the hands on the keyboard actually doing the creation because you need to be technical, need the work. So when we're starting with a user, we basically want to make sure that technology is not only supportive, but they're the ones driving the application. We've trained about 12,000 people now to create software outside of our company in Unqork. So it's a big user base. Each of those, I would say, is about 200 times faster than a Java developer that we've created. So we've actually in production today, we have over 100 million lines of equivalent code running for the customers. Like it's bigger than most operating systems we're running today. So it's amazing. So to me, it's around the right group setup, the right talent ready to go and actually drive the initiative forward.
Well, and it's
critical.
You point out 2 really important things. One of them is like each new user, each new customer is sort of building on the experience that you've gained from the other ones, which is fantastic, as opposed to everybody starting from zero. I think the other thing, and I'll sort of end with this, I think it's great that you said, nobody ever comes to you and says, like, I want to buy a platform, or nobody comes to you and says, like, I want to write software. They come to you and they say, I want to solve this problem. It's a thing I tell people all the time because I work on this weird thing called Kubernetes. I say, look, I've never met a CIO or a CEO who wakes up and says, our business has a Kubernetes problem. So yeah, something to. I think it's great insight for everybody.
And just to give you the plug there real quick, so we abstract the technology so we can migrate everyone to future technologists. So we moved everyone from Docker to Kubernetes without a single person knowing it ever occurred, not 1 minute of downtime.
Yeah.
And think about the shifts that you could do there, and that's exactly what you could accomplish. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Gary,
Awesome.
I want to thank you for your time. This has been awesome. Folks, I hope you enjoyed it. We're just starting to sort of scratch the surface in this space, and it's great to have Gary's expertise sort of lead us off on this. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. As always, folks, thank you all for listening. Thanks for telling a friend, helping us grow the community, and thanks for giving us feedback in all the places that you listen to the podcast. So with that, we'll wrap it up. I want to thank Gary again, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.